next guest is Hal Christensen. It's great to see you, as always.
Good to see you, David.
You too. Long time conference speaker and long-time performance support expert. And so Hal is here to talk to us about it's time to shift our perspectives from teaching how to enabling doing. So probably it's still time to shift our perspectives. I think this has been Hal's work for some time. And he's with quick confidence here in New York, and always great to see you. So I'll turn it over to you, share your slides, do whatever you want to do, and looking forward to hearing a new one.
I guess it's better than being shiftless, though. That's good.
Exactly. We'll take the shift over the shiftless, given the choice. Yeah.
Let me share my screen here.
All right.
I think I can manage all this. Let's get started then. Yeah, my name is Hal Christensen. I've been in the learning and development area for many years, 40 years, in fact. And much of that time I've devoted to dealing with how we can take the computer and make use of the power of the computer, not just for teaching someone to do something or learning, but how at the same time we could also use it to help the user, the person, our audience, to be able to perform better at the same time. Eventually got into what we call the performance support movement, focusing on just that. We focus on what is the performance and how do we increase the performance at the same time enabling learning. And what I want to talk to today is where, let me move the slides along here. I wanted to talk about the shift, as David said, that needs to take place and is taking place, I think, between the old way of thinking about learning and development and a new perspective, a new model, a new paradigm. Then I want to explain the need for that shift, and I want to then suggest an alternative model. And then finally, I've been working on for a while, trying to find some way to take my thoughts and put it into a proof of concept that I can show to people and allow people to work with and share, and to see if we can begin to make it easy for people to begin to use this concept. And so that'll be at the end. So I want to begin by defining learning and development and the concept of shift. And let me start this way by saying before Galileo, let me get my screen out of here. Before Galileo, the universe looked like this. And right in the middle of that, of course, is the Earth. After Galileo, the universe looked like this, with the sun in the middle and Earth and the planets circling around the sun. So we went from a model or paradigm or perspective, whatever you want to call it, called geocentrism, which the Earth is the center of the universe. And you look at it and you use that and say everything works that way. So you try to understand the world from the basis of the Earth is the center. And why does this do this? Why do these things go this way and that way, et cetera? Well, that's because the Earth is the center of the universe. After Galileo, we moved to heliocentrism, which is that the sun is the center of the Earth. And then everything that you looked at from the point of view of geocentrism no longer works. And you begin to say, oh, there's another way of looking at this, and that changes how we go about understanding it, and also how we go about our lives. And the reason why was that paradigm shift is because this model with the Earth as the center and the sun and the planets revolving around the Earth, that just doesn't match reality. And I want to take this kind of shift that I'm talking about. The whole way in which you look at things impacts what kind of things you produce. In our case, talking about learning and development, I want to take a look at what is the learning and development model that we've been working with for who knows for how long, tens and tens of years, long before I got into the business. And that is that in order for somebody to do something, they have to first learn how to do it. We have to have a class, we have a course or something. We have to teach them how to do the work. If we don't do that, then they'll never be able to do it. It'll be trial and error. And so the concept is that effective performance derives from the prior knowledge that you've had in the class. So that means, as you understand, of course, is that in the course, that's where you acquire the knowledge that you need to do the job. That's where you memorize how to do the work. It's stored in your memory. Then you get on the job, you follow the workflow from memory. You try to recognize when to use the knowledge you have. You recall the memorized knowledge and apply the knowledge to that you recall to the work. But the problem is, as we all know, I think training takes more time than anyone wants, more time than the workers want, more time than the management wants, more time than you want. We can't teach all that the workers need to know. The class just can't be long enough for what someone might need. But we usually manage to teach more than they can absorb and commit to memory and later recall. So we have knowledge that the workers never get, and then knowledge that the workers get and forget. And you have what we're all familiar with that, the concept of the forgetting curve, and also the concept of scrap learning, which is the learning that takes place that we deliver, that people get, and then when they get back on the job, it never gets applied. And the conference board suggests that somewhere between 50 and 90% of the training we do is scrap and never gets absorbed, it never gets applied, it never gets used. And lastly, the problem with the current training model is that processes, circumstances, work environments, and so on, they're all going to change and change often. And what you have learned and memorized from your class in a few months is likely to be obsolete. And so we have a paradigm that doesn't match reality. This does not work. It does not work in terms of making it work and getting people up and running effectively and efficiently. It doesn't accelerate their learning, and it doesn't accelerate their performance, competent performance. It doesn't maximize their performance, and it certainly doesn't sustain their performance over time. And what we have to look at, what is it that our workers want? Because I think there's part of this that we are losing when we use the old paradigm, is that we focus on what do we in training think they need to know and should be taught, and we don't really do the analysis we need to do as what do our workers really want. And in my opinion, what workers really want, and my experience tells me, they want what I call day one performance. That's exaggeration, but day one performance in the sense that they want to get the job done well and done quickly, and they want it done first time and every time. So they want to be able to reduce the amount of time they spend learning. They want to be able to quickly accelerate their amount of knowledge, accelerate learning to and getting to performing their jobs. And they want to be able to have something that will be sustained over time. And strangely enough, that's what our organizations need. Even though our organizations are fully behind, it seems, the idea that everybody should be trained before they do the work, what they really want is the same thing. There's no benefit to them to have people in classes for many days or even hours. No benefit to have people working on the job, forgetting what they have to do, fumbling around, stopping, asking other people, looking up this, looking up that, trying to find an answer. And they don't really benefit from when things become obsolete, that you have to start all over again, start new training, or people will just, again, fumble around and not do the job well. So both the organization and the workers want the same thing. They want day one performance. They want the job done well, and they want it done quickly. And so that means we need to have a new model. It's like Galileo said, you need to have a new model. We need to have a model that works and a model that's going to meet the needs of the people. Let me add one other thing in terms of the failure of the current model. As we get into our post-pandemic, I hope, world, you're going to find that many organizations have to do a lot of onboarding and reboarding and reskilling and upskilling and so forth. There's going to be a lot of training, but the old paradigm, that's an awful lot of training that's going to need to be done to a lot of people in a fairly short period of time. There isn't going to be enough time to do all that training, and everything is changing. So whatever they do is likely to change again. So the model that we have, perspective, it doesn't match the reality of where we're going to be in the next year, 2 or 3 years. A lot of people working from home and so on, a lot of procedures, a lot of ways in which we go about doing things are going to change. If you're going to have a training program for each one of those, or you're going to allow people to fumble around and call up somebody and bother this person from doing their work so they can get you the answer to something, that's not going to be efficient. So we need something new. And the new model I'm suggesting, I call performance learning. And I use that as one word. It's not 2 separate items. It is one word. It is the merger of the learning with the doing so that they occur simultaneously. It's not a separated, here you do the learning and then you're doing. It is the merger of those. Performance learning is the merger of those that you can do, that they can occur simultaneously. If we take a look at the learn first model and the performance learning model, the key differences here is, one is that the learning is not the objective. In the learn first model, learning is the objective. What we're doing is trying to take someone, give them the knowledge they need in order to be able to do the job. Learning is objective. In the performance learning model, the learning is not the objective. The learning is the byproduct of doing. You learn as you do. So you're actually doing something and learning at the same time. You're eliminating all the need of learning all that, whatever involves you have to learn, learning that all up front. And the goal is not to teach how to do the job. It's really, the goal is to enable, and to enable day one performance, to get somebody up and running as quickly as possible and efficiently, and to sustain that. So performance learning is looking at a different angle. It's looking at how do we enable day one performance. It's not looking at how do we get stuff, and we do a knowledge transfer and get information into the head of the workers. So if you look at that model, I think one thing to look at is think of of a GPS. If you're going to be making a trip, let's say I'm in New York, let's say I have to go to downtown Philadelphia tomorrow morning for a meeting. And I've never driven to downtown Philadelphia, or at least haven't in many years. Would I take a training course? Would anybody take a training course? Would you find a training course that you could take before I have to go tomorrow morning? Would it be effective? Would you be able to memorize the entire route from here to Philadelphia? Not likely. You get into your car and you turn on the GPS, and the GPS guides you and takes you there without you having to know how to do it beforehand, and tells you when to turn, what to do, et cetera, et cetera. But you don't have to learn it, and not to learn beforehand. But if I were to take that trip every Monday, every Friday morning for a month or so, by the end of the month, the fourth time I do it, third time I do it, I probably could do it even without the GPS, because I would have internalized, I would have learned from having done it. And so the learning comes from the doing, not from learning and then thinking about it and doing. And so it is a byproduct. And that learning that you internalize is as effective as anything you're going to get in your classroom beforehand. But now we've already done it by the time we learn it. But I want to suggest another possibility, and that I think works, and that is the idea of a recipe. I think all of us have at one point faced that moment in which you have to cook something for yourself and for somebody else or other people, friends, roommates, whatever, and you don't know how to cook, and you want to figure out how to make a meal that you want to make. There's no time to take a training program. And your goal is not to become a major cook or anything. The goal is to get this meal on the table and make it good. And what do you turn to? You turn to a recipe. And that has been the secret of recipes for all along, is that what they do is enable you to create the meal, the dish, whatever, without having to go through a lot of training beforehand. It's to make it as simple as possible for you to do it from scratch. And I want to look at that recipe model because that's sort of the model of what I'm playing around with for jobs, referring to them as job recipes. And based on that model, I want to take a look at if we try to adopt a model like that, a performance learning model, in which people are going to learn from the actual doing, then there's going to have to be a larger shift in our thinking. And that's where we get back to Galileo. It's going to be that kind of a shift. It's no longer looking at training as being the major focus here. It's going to be on the performance. And it's no longer going to be that the Earth the sun revolves around the Earth, or that everything we do revolves around the training. And I want to talk about some of the key shifts in thinking that need to go on in order to understand how performance learning differs from the learn first, do later model, and what the consequences of that are. And the first is, who is the audience? Now, you ask people in our profession who the audience is. The word that you hear very often is, well, our audience is the learners. But I've done work for many years for many, many different corporations, and I've yet to find a corporation that hired a learner. We're looking at people who are trying to get their work done, and we're calling them learners. The audience is not learners. The audience is people who are working and trying to do their job. The basic motivation is to get their job done. They are not learners. They are taking learning courses because they are being told that's the way in which you are able to do the work. But that's not their goal. The desired outcome, what is the desired outcome for us in learning profession? The desired outcome generally has been good test scores, and everybody's doing well and passed it, and we can say that's a good course. But in the case of performance learning, the desired outcome really is a successful completion of the task of the job that you're trying to do. It's the work, it's the performance. It's not the performer, it's the performance. And what do we measure? We don't measure test scores, and we don't stick things into LMS and so on. We don't make decisions on how we place people in jobs in our organizations because of the test scores. That's what we do now. But for performance learning, you're not going to do that. What you're going to measure is, did the job get done well? And if the job got done well, then whatever work we did to enable that, then we've done well. It's not by the test score, it's by the actual measuring of the work that's being done. And ultimately, what are we trying to change here? And it's a little tricky because most of what we talk about when we talk about learning in our organizations, and this becomes more and more, I think, in the last 20 years, as organizations have become more, the training has become more centralized in human resources. We look at training as a way of developing the individual. And so our focus is on the individual and what the individual needs to know. And what we seek to change then is the individual. We seek to make the individual more intelligent, have more knowledge in his or her head in order to be able to, we hope, do the job. But when you get into performance learning, what we seek to change is the performance. We seek to make it easier for someone to be able to perform the job. We need to take that person, who I don't want to call a learner, it's a worker, and enable them to do the job more quickly and more effectively. And what we need to change is the way in which they go about doing that. I don't care how much smarter they become, because that's not the issue in terms of they're doing the work. What the issue is, can they do the work and do it effectively? If I can enable them to do the work effectively, does it really matter whether they have learned a lot of stuff in their heads? No. In fact, the less they have to learn, the better. So the concept of a recipe, and this is just a sample recipe, and the words are all Greeking, as they say, but this is not a Greek recipe, I don't think. This is probably what a recipe has, and I want to compare what we're doing and how it fits into that model. And so the task we're dealing with is making strawberry vanilla pancakes. And there's a nice picture so that we can get a sense of what they will look like if we cook them according to the recipe. And it looks good. But what you have is two major parts. One is the ingredients and preparation. And the ingredients is the part where it's going to tell you need 2 onions, not in this recipe, but 6 strawberries and 2 cups of flour and whatever it might be. It might also tell you preparation that before you start, you need to take those onions and you need to slice them so they can be used in the recipe. In this case, the strawberry should be sliced before you do the actual execution of the job. So what we're doing in the ingredients part is preparing and planning for the execution of the recipe. We want that to go smoothly. And so what we have is the first section, very important part, is the planning to do that. The second part is the preparation or the execution, how you go about doing it, the step-by-step does. So that's simple enough. We're all familiar with that. So the idea is if we get the ingredients and do the preparation we need to do up front, then do the recipe, follow the steps in the recipe, we will be successful. If we fail to get the ingredients before we start, we're going to find we're in the middle of this, oh, shucks, and the recipe needs strawberries, and I have to run to the store and get the strawberries. But make sure that ingredient part is very important. So in this case, in the recipe, where is the knowledge? When I ask that, I'm saying that this knowledge as compared to training. If you're in a training session, that knowledge is in the training session, in the course, and you're taking that knowledge and you're putting it into your head. Now the knowledge is in your head. And now you're sitting down and trying to make strawberry vanilla pancakes. With the recipe, all familiar with recipes, The recipe is usually right there on the counter as you're preparing the dinner. It is right there. You do not have to memorize it because it is right there. It is visible. Well, what's the next step? First I do this, and what's the next step? Oh, I do this. You don't have to memorize that. You don't have to recall it from anywhere. You don't have to put it in your head because it is there. It tells you exactly what you need, and you can go ahead and do it. So it's moving the knowledge from externally in a classroom, and then trying to move it into the head of the worker, and then trying to apply it to the task that you're doing. That's not what works here. What works here is that it's right by you as you were doing the work, and you save all that memorization because you don't have to remember what step 2 is. Step 2 is clearly what it is. You don't have to remember what are all the ingredients. You've got the ingredients right there. And how is it structured? The recipe is structured as a workflow. What you do first is the ingredients and prepare the ingredients, and the second is the actual preparing of the meal or the dish. So it is a workflow. You start in one place and get to the end. It's not starting in the middle and saying, okay, let's figure out what to do on step 3. It is set up, the recipe is set up as the whole process of doing it. And so it carries all of the information that you need in order to successfully do it. You can go and look at step 3 or 4 or 5 at any point that you wish to do it, but the starting point of successfully completing this, the execution of this recipe, would be to follow the whole workflow from beginning to end. And to continue to do that until at some point you probably memorize this recipe. And the crucial step, as I mentioned before, is in the ingredients and the preparation and the planning up front, so that you can make it as easy as possible for you to do something later. You have everything assembled, everything ready. So when you get there, you don't have to say, oh, no, I have to measure this or run out by this and so on. It prepares you for that point of the execution so that you get everything is ready to go. And that saves you a hell of a lot of time and a lot of mistakes when you're working on the job. And again, what is the focus? The focus here is not, I'm going to teach you how to make strawberry vanilla pancakes. The focus here is, I am going to enable you to make strawberry vanilla pancakes, though you've never made them before. And so it is on the enabling, not on the teaching. And that is the focus. So what we're getting at then is that the recipe is sort of a tool. That we're not talking about knowledge transfer. Well, that's nice. I have the knowledge in my head, so that be all and end all to get that knowledge. We're talking about a recipe is something different from a class because a recipe is a tool. And it brings me to one of my favorite quotes, is by the famous Buckminster Fuller. If he's not famous to you, Buckminster Fuller is the brilliant man that developed the geodesic dome. And a number of other things that he invented over the years. Fascinating character. And he had a quote, and I paraphrase a little bit, but basically this that makes it, to me, a hell of a lot of sense, and basically is the core of the kind of thing we're talking about. It says, if you want to change how someone thinks or behaves, do not try to teach them to change. Do not try to teach them to think differently or behave differently. Give them a tool, the use of which will require them to think and behave differently. And I'm going to follow up on that. But the concept is that we can build tools with our recipes that make it easy for someone to follow through and do it. And they will do it correctly because we are prompting them, nudging them, setting it up so that they will do it the way in which we want them to do it, rather than saying, okay, let me teach you what you have to do, and I hope you remember when you get around to doing it. We are structuring what people do. The recipe structures the order that you do it and how you do it and ingredients you use, so that you don't have to teach them. We're giving you a tool, and that tool is going to guide you to do what you need to do. So when we get to performance learning, it changes our whole perspective here. And what our goal is, we can accomplish. With the learn first model, what we are saying to the people in the class, let me tell you how to do this. I'm going to explain it to you so you know how to do it. And we might say, let me show you how to do it. So that'll make it easier, so you'll learn that. But you remember that, because I'm going to tell you and show you, and this is what you have to do. But performance support says, no, let me help you as you do it. which is where you want the help. This is where you're going to remember it. As you're doing it, I'm going to help you with the recipe. I'm going to help you do this job. It's not let me show you and so on. It is let me help you. And what can I do to help you? What can I give you at that particular point? How can I explain it so that you'll be able to do it? But I'm suggesting we can go further and do something even more. And that gets to another quote from Theodore Levitt, an economist. This goes back 60 years, I think the quote is. And I think there's one, think about, and it's very interesting. The concept is he's doing in marketing and marketing products and developing products and innovative products and so forth. And what is it the customers want? And he said, customers do not want to buy a 1/4-inch drill. They want a 1/4-inch hole. Our workers don't want to buy a training program that's going to help them do something. They want it done. What can we do to eliminate the need to do that process of sticking things in people's heads and they got to go through hoops to learn it so that they can do something, which if we can do it for you. And I think it's a concept that's almost quite, maybe this is the more general model for IKEA. I think most of you are familiar with IKEA. And IKEA is going to give you, I would say you want to build a bookcase, it's going to give you the materials for bookcase, and the directions they give you is not a training course. Directions they give you are basic illustrations that take you step by step through it and look at it and you do it. And that's it. And if they've done it correctly, which they do, you're able to make the bookcase even though you've never made a bookcase before. And one of the things you need in the bookcase is shelves. And normally what you need is you have shelves and there are dowels in the end of the shelves. They need to be stuck in holes in the sides of the bookcase. Well, the concept becomes, does IKEA give you a 1/4-inch drill and say, okay, now you got to measure this and then you can drill the hole here, or can they take you further? And they realize they can take you further. They can have the hole drilled for you. So when you buy it, the hole is already there. That's what workers want. That's what we want. We want to eliminate that need to have to buy into the training and do all that learning in order to be able to, before we can accomplish anything. How can we eliminate the need to buy something or to learn something in order to be able to do it? And so we're going an extra step on this. Now, this is referred to as something you might want to take a look at it, which is jobs to be done theory. Jobs to be done is a concept. I've narrowed it down to this. The customer and the worker have one main purpose: to complete the job they're working on. That is the goal of the customer. That is the goal of the customer in this case, and for our case, the goal of the worker. Workers at their desk, they're doing work. Nobody's sitting at their desk just thinking and then being idle. I don't think so. They have work. Now, when you have people working a 50-hour week, 60-hour week, and so on, they have a lot of work they want to get done, and their main goal is, how do I get this work off my desk and out the door? And jobs to be done theory says if you're going to create new products for someone, then they're looking at the consumer market, and you want to create new products that people will buy or upgrades to products you already have. Look at what work they're trying to do and where they're having difficulty do that work, and eliminate that work by giving them something that would help them eliminate that work. And so when we look at the concept of performance learning and doing a recipe, we're looking at where are the parts that are going to be difficult for somebody to do, and is there some way we can drill the hole? One way to keep them having to learn a lot, and one way we can speed up their doing the work by looking at what is the path of the performance. And it comes down to something like this. These are two runners. The one on the left is a sprinter. The one on the right is a hurdler. If these two runners are running in a race and they're both going 100 meters, who is going to win the race? Well, it's clearly that the sprinter is going to win the race because the hurdler has to jump over the hurdles. Now, the question is, what can we do for the hurdler? We want to get the hurdler to make as good time as the sprinter. What can we do for the hurdler? General method for our training learn first model is, well, we have to teach the hurdler to hurdle faster or higher or something. We have to find a way and get that hurdler to get over the hurdles more quickly than currently. So how do we help the hurdler? If we don't do, and I'm saying we don't want to do the training, training part would say we're going to teach you how to get over the hurdles. The performance learning part suggests, can we get rid of the hurdles? Can we, in our recipe, manipulate, nudge, guide your performance in a way that goes around the hurdles or removes the hurdles? Some way make it easier for you to do the job rather than saying, well, the hurdles are there. We're going to have to teach you how to jump over the hurdles. We're looking at, well, here's the job process. We're mapping out the job. Where are the things that are going to slow you down that you're going to have to remember or memorize and things like that, all that stuff that has to go into your head? Can we find ways in which we can eliminate the need for that? Can we find the hacks around it? And that's what we're talking about. So that when we're talking about performance sports, it changes things. The last point I'm adding here is, can we make the work easier? So I'm suggesting a model, performance learning model, which is something that will do what we're talking about here. It will not only tell you how to do something and show you how to do it, but the key part of it, the performance learning, is let me help you as you do it and let me make the work easier. Can we give you something that will skip over 3 steps that you normally have in this process? And that's what we're talking about. And that's where I'm trying to go with this, is can we build a model that will achieve that? How do we design this? How do we make it work so that we can give people something that's like a recipe? They will use the recipe, and as they use the recipe, it will help them do the work and also help them make it easier for them to get the work done more quickly. So in a sense, we are accelerating, maximizing, and sustaining the work that they need to do. So I'm trying to create and put together this concept of a performance learning job recipe, and I'm working on basically a proof of concept for this model. And proof of concept is, what are the basic elements, and can we put it in something simple that anybody would be able to see and anybody would be able to play with, in order to be able to create a job recipe that you can demonstrate to other people. You're going to find, you start talking about this in your corporate world, that there are many people in the organization think there's no other thing we can do besides training and then doing. And so we need to have a proof of concept that says, look at this. This is going to show you how someone can do something and not have to go through a training program to do it. And it does it better because it makes it easier for them to do the job, and they get it done more quickly, and they do it much more satisfactorily. And if something changes, we can change the recipe so that they continue to stay up to date. And they can always use this at any time they need to do the job. And so it's a proof of concept I'm trying to put together, and a sort of a minimum viable product, which you use the term of software developers, product developers, is something that, as it works on its own, but that's all the sort of bare bones. It doesn't get to all the things you might possibly be able to do. But I'm trying to set up something that would be a minimum variable product to enable anybody to create similar job recipes. And we'll be talking a little bit about that as we go forward. So at this point, are there any questions? David, can we take questions like coming in?
Yeah, we can take questions through the chat and the Q&A. So if people have questions through this part, it's kind of the momentary intermission for questions up to this point before we get into how to create these. So if there are questions now, it's a great time for them. If not, we can move on ahead. All right, looks like nothing yet. So you want to move on ahead and then we'll pick them up at the end?
Okay, very good. Okay, so I want to show where I am at this point in terms of creating a performance learning job recipe proof of concept. And the process, as I see it, is 4 major steps. Actually, it's the 5th one I probably should put in there. Don't have it in there, but I'll get to it. First is to create a job map. And here I'm following the concepts of the job to be done theory. Is that their basic core steps? I'm going to show you that job map. Then to define the tasks that need to be supported for each of these steps of that task, and which ones are they, what it needs for it, and suggesting ways to do that. The third is to add then to this picture microlearning, which is there are lots of resources out there on the internet that people might want to use to bring in to be appropriate at a particular time in this process. There is a big move now for microlearning, small 2 minutes, 3 minutes videos, that type of thing. I want to use that same concept, except that I want to put it within the framework of the recipe so that it's not something you get 3 weeks ago in an email and you're supposed to look at it and remember it and try to remember it 3 weeks later. Is as you are doing a particular job, it's going to give you references of resources that might be helpful for you to do that particular step in the job a little bit better than you might have done it. And those are the kind of micro-learning assets we're doing, but this time I want to tie it into the framework of the work that's being done. And the last is the concept of designing what I call micro tools. And you might look at it as basically designing job aids, templates, other kinds of things that are going to speed up a person's ability to do the job they're trying to do. And I'm going to show you how to do that. We're doing that. And I'm trying to do this all being something that I want to be able to help people get a hold of and without any cost. I'm doing this all with tools that do not cost anything. They're basically Google tools. I'm using Google Sheets and I'm using Google Maps. Google Sheets and Google Site for part of this to give you an idea of what that is. So I want to now just walk through pieces of this. It's not something that's completed, but I'm looking at in terms of, let's say I was going to create a recipe for people who are managers or in a corporation, in an organization, and they need to be better at running successful meetings. And rather than give them a training program on running meetings, in which they will remember, and then next time they run a meeting 2 weeks from now, they will have forgotten a good part of it and fumble through it. Can we create a recipe that they can have? And so when they get the recipe, they can begin to immediately start to set up and design and then execute the meeting. So I'm going to use sort of in the background the concept of running a successful meeting. I don't have a detail for that, but just it's kind of the center point of it. Okay. We need to start with the jobs to be done job map to understand that. And that is, again, from the jobs to be done concept. By the way, I did not mention a reference. If you're interested in that, you contact me. I'll send it to you. But these concepts come from several people, but two main characters are Clayton Christensen, no relationship, professor at Harvard Business School, who unfortunately passed away last year. And the other is Tony Olwick, who has a company Strategin, Stratgegn, which has a lot of materials that'll be useful. And then you just Google jobs to be done, and you'll find there's a lot of organizations playing around with this concept. But this is the map that they generally use. The map is that you need to begin by defining what the job is that you're going to be doing. Then you need to locate what materials you're going to need. Then you need to prepare those materials and get them ready for the meeting, or getting, in my case, the meeting, but getting ready for the execution. Then you need to complete your then you need to confirm that you have done all the things you need to do to prepare for this event or the execution. Then you execute, making use of the planning, preparing that you've done previously. As you are executing, you're monitoring what it is that you are doing so that you can see where there are problems that you might need to deal with. And later you can modify those problems, those things that need to be changed. And the last is to conclude what are the follow-up things that you need to do in order to ensure that the entire process and the job is done successfully. So that is the map. So I'm looking at when we're doing a recipe, a job recipe, those would be the 8 points in which we start. We have with the strawberry recipe, we had the instructions and the ingredients and the preparation and so forth. This would bring it down into these 8 steps. And then what I'm going to do is that focus on a little bit the micro tool worksheet. which is where we are going to do a lot of the making of the job aids and making of other tools. We've been doing that with a micro tool with a Google worksheet, and that'll be a major part of what we do. Now, and the second part of it is something we'll call the sidekicks, which I'm going to show you. That's the thing that holds it all together. And let's not get it. Let me close this down for a bit and see if I can get to what I need here. And this is the concept of a sidekick. That a recipe is valuable because it is able to be something that you can use alongside the work that you're doing. You take a training program, it's all external. Concept of recipe, it's right there on the counter as you're doing the cooking. In this case, we're going to be creating a job recipe, which will walk people through the 8 steps that we were talking about. And that you can put on the side and set it up as a separate window, which I've done many times, and which actually going to walk you through that process. It's going to introduce you to the job recipe. It may begin with a video, so walking through the job recipe, and then it's going to you can move forward, and it's going to then all of the 8 steps of that are going to be there, and we take a look at each one. And for each one of these, it's going to be the define stage. It's going to be an introduction. There might be a video introducing what that stage will be looking like and what you need to do in this particular stage. And then it would be going through the various things that we have decided you need to do in order to be able to do that step. So that's the first part of that. And what it does is that this is the launching pad for the various things. You're going to have a spreadsheet that we'll show in a minute, but they're also going to be here. This is where you're going to be able to access the micro learning, which is going to be various links to that. It might be an article on some way on running a meeting or how to prepare for a meeting or whatever it might be. It could be a video, a whole variety of possibilities that it could be. And that we're the same for the other pieces. But the next part of that is, now I want to share something. So here we're looking at, after we've done the job map, and much of what we're going to be doing in the actual developing of the tools and the guidance of this is going to be done in something simple, which is Google Sheets. Same thing as Excel. Free, anybody use it, you can share it, and the great advantages to all that. And so we're breaking it down, those 8 steps that we talked about, we're breaking it down to define, locate, and so forth. And this is the sheet you're going to be using as you're beginning to map out what it is we're going to be putting into our recipe. And starts with what stage are we on? We're on the define stage. That's a stage where you determine objectives, plan the approach, assess, and selecting resources. So if I am going to be working on during a successful meeting, in the define stage, I need to define what my objectives are going to be. And I see the task, and I would fill this in. This is a template, so I would fill this in on what I want to do, what particular tasks need to be done, and I might want to define what the goals are in this plan. I need to do make plans for doing things, selecting certain things, determining these. This is the template that you would use to begin to think through each stage of the flow, and then what they need to do in that stage of the flow, and then what we can provide to support in terms of either micro tools or in tips in terms of articles and videos that they could link to that would provide more information. And so in this case, we're choosing the first part, define, and the micro tools is a template which gives you goals, outlines, and measurements that you can fill in that's going to define and make sure you have a clear idea of what it is, the goal you're going to be doing. And then there's some articles and videos that you might be able to do it. We can do locate, and we get to locate, and there are various things to help locate the materials that you need, and there'll be templates for that and the preparation templates for that. So let me just show you quickly what those will be in terms of the worksheets, and you'll be working to worksheets, and that sidekick I showed before could be on the side guiding you through which part of the worksheet you need to do where you want to be at this particular point. So if you look at the one for define, one of the pieces that would likely be on here is something which gets at your goal statement. What is your ultimate goal with what you're trying to do? What would the outcome be? By what standards would you use? And how would you measure that? And so you might have 2 or 3 goals. So that's one of the major worksheets that you'd be working on there. This is not all fleshed out. This is just a template and structure so you can get an idea of what we're doing. It could be in terms of the locate, you need to locate first, you need to locate what data you're going to require for the meeting. And so I put in here, for example, you might need the meetings for the last minute, minutes from the last meeting. Who has those minutes, and then a link to his email address so that you can obtain those minutes. So you make sure you're going to have those minutes at point. Everybody will have those minutes before they go to the meeting. A budget for the first quarter. Who has that? Who got contact to get that? You're planning for the meeting, and this is the planning stage. You're planning for the meeting. What am I going to need in order to be able to make sure the meeting will run well, and I can accomplish what I wish to accomplish, which I've set in the goal standard. Second is other materials. Maybe this time we're going to need a slide projector. So you might have that. Who do I get that slide projector? We might have, I don't have it yet, would be find a location where we can meet, and might give you a list of, here are 6 rooms in our office building where you might be able to hold a meeting. Here's the learning capacity. Here's the capacity of each one of these. How many people do you want? And choose which room makes the most sense. And here's the person to click to contact to reserve that room. It's doing the things in the planning that you need to do and making sure make sure you think about your materials. It nudges you to think about the data that you require. It's going to nudge you to think about who are the people you want to invite. So you do that up front and you compare their email and so forth. And once you've done this, you can keep using a template similar to this to fill it in. You may need to get input on the agenda for the coming meeting. And so here are some people you might put in that you need to contact, who you want to talk to see if they have items that want to be added to the meeting. Anything that you need to do in that upfront preparation that's going to make the meeting run smoother, the recipe is nudging you to do it. You don't have to memorize and remember, oh, I got to do this, I have to do that, and so on. It is guiding you and saying, okay, we got you back. You got to do this, you got to do this, got to do this. We're nudging you through this and guiding you through that and making sure you do it properly and make sure you get all the information that you need. We can also, this can be shared, so we can set this up as spreadsheets that are seeded for particular jobs. And so it might have then in terms of room location or in terms of equipment and so on, you might already see who are the people that you need to contact in order to be able to do that. So we can save steps of looking it up and guiding it, and we have it here. And as you get new names and new materials, you fill it in and you find it. Now you have that saved. And so when you need it, you have that information. So it not only nudges you to find something out, it gives you a place in which you can put it, or gives you information that already tells you where things are that you might want to do. Third part here is the preparation. This is a major piece of this, and that is where you should be seeing another screen. Sorry. Okay, so prepare. One of the main things you need to prepare is the agenda. It's one of the items on there. So what it does is force you to think about what items you want to have on the agenda and get those down. But and then what it does is then when you think about it, and then what it does is actually give you. Yep. Right. So what it is a template for agenda. If I said, as we normally do in training, well, okay, I'll get a sheet of paper and I can write out an agenda. Make sure you put this on and push that, all that you need to put in your head. What this template does is say, okay, these are all the things you need to think about, and this is the way you need to set it up and set up the meeting, and you just begin to fill it in. So you need to have, there are things like timing the items. You need to have what each item is and what the objective is required and so on and all that. And you then fill that in, it's nudging you and guiding you to do exactly what it is you need to do. And that's the key to this kind of stuff, is you're saving 70% of the work involved in doing that. If we go back to prepare, there's one other thing that I want to mention. You can do things like this and say, okay, what problems do you anticipate in this meeting and how might you deal with it? Well, in this case, I put in George will waste time talking. So set some time limit for discussion. If you notice on the agenda, I put how much time we would have on the need for that agenda item. You get agreement from the group. Okay, it'll take 10 minutes. When George starts talking, the group says, George, shut up. We only have 10 minutes to do this. So you're working, anticipating the problems and then trying to find solutions before the problems arise. And there are also links to other resources here. So let me go back to this. Let me move through it and wrap it. And I showed you the sidekick and so on. So basically The process is one would open up the Sidekick. It'll give you some introduction and some small amount of training on running a meeting or whatever the task might be. It's going to give you guidance for the 8 steps, and you can go through that, and then going to point you where in the worksheet to find the worksheet for that particular step, what tab it is in the worksheet. It's going to then provide you also with links that'll give you to articles that might be useful on how to do certain kinds of things. It might link to videos that will help you guide you on certain kinds of things. So if you have an issue of dealing with, if one of the problems you thought there might be some disruption because Harry and Sue can't get along together, you might have a link, a video link to a video that shows how to handle that, or to an article that shows how to handle that. You can curate zillions of articles and videos from the web, or you can get it from create your own. So the concept is then the concept of a recipe. The concept that I'm going to give you something, it is going to walk you through it. It's not going to tell you about it, learn it, and memorize it. It's going to be right there as you do it. It's going to walk you through each step of the stage of doing. In this case, it was creating a new, running a successful meeting. It's going to take you through that process. At each step, it's going to explain what you need to do, and they give you pictures. It may give you resources, whatever it might be, but it's going to give you tools. And the tools are going to do what we want to do. They're going to nudge you and do what Buckminster Fuller was talking about. It's going to make sure you act in a certain way, do the things you need to do, and get the results that you want, because it's constantly focused on directly doing that. It's telling you and guiding you through it, not telling you to remember. So this is a prototype we've been working on. I'm looking for people who might want to, or interested in this kind of thing, might see some opportunity within your organization where something as quick and simple as this, and any one of you can do that, and be happy to show somebody how to do this, and give these tools to them to be able to show that you can create a recipe that would save training. My experience in doing performance support tools, something like this, especially just like this, but it is not uncommon to eliminate 70% of the training time. And that gets you much closer to that day one performance, because you're taking the information that people need and you're putting it side by side, and you're making it easy for them, and it walks them through them, helps them and guides them, and works with them in order to be able to complete the task that they're trying to do, rather than here, learn this, memorize it, take a test, goodbye, which is our normal time. So it's time for a shift, and that is the shift I am proposing, and happy to take any questions that anyone might have.
All right, well, fantastic. Well, thanks so much. And if there's time, probably just a minute or two for questions if people have them. And I guess while we're waiting to see if there are other questions, does this model work sort of for anything? Are there is there anything, any type of problem that this is best suited for? Is kind of just, generally applicable across the board, and it's just a matter of, within an organization finding the problem that you really want to attack?
Well, the key issue, David, is a lot of courses that we do are basically courses to teach skills, softer skills, and so on, and they're not tied to a particular process or job. What we're trying to do here is recognize that, hey, a lot of things should be tied to the actual work that they're doing, otherwise it's floating out there. And that if you're creating materials for that, those could be the resources that you could pull into a recipe when you are working on running a meeting. There's probably something from my class that you took. I did stuff where there was a set of competencies people had done for the company, and so that which competencies were appropriate. We didn't teaching them. We brought in the description of that competency and how it might be used in various situations. So you're taking the general stuff and putting it into the process. So the recipe is best where there is a process to work from, but it makes use of other types of training that you're doing, and that other type of training needs to be tied to something real. Otherwise, it's not going to be very successful anyway. So,
great. All right. Well, thanks so much. We have so much more to talk about. We are at the end of our time. So, Hal, thanks once again. It's great to see you as always, and I can be around the rest of the conference. People want to talk to Hal, know where to reach him on the screen and through the chat and through Hoover and through anything else.